Okay. So I have 3 items today, and I have something else, just in case we have a little more time, but I don't know if we're going to go through it, but I saw something very special before Shavuos, and not really on the Parsha, but it's on the Parsha of every day, so we'll see. If not this week, we'll do it next week. Okay, the first piece is from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Pasuk says, this is at the end of the Parsha, right? There are a lot of things. Behaalotecha is a fairly long Parsha. Very long Parsha. You have a number of things. You have the menorah. You have Vayi bin Soa Ha'aron, the separate little Parsha of 2 psukim. You have the Sanhedrin. You have Nevi'im. The end of the Parsha, you have the Maisa with Miriam. So we're going to start with that. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe. So Aaron, Miriam, and Aaron, Miriam spoke inappropriately to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? And as a result of that, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe va'avia Yarok b'faneha halo tilkalem shivat yamim. What happened is why did she criticize him? The Torah doesn't say it. Rashi explains it. It's a sort of tzniut. The Torah just says that she acted inappropriately. But what she did was Moshe Rabbeinu and Tzipporah had separated from each other, not to have marital relations, and she felt that was wrong. And how do you do such a thing, right? So she really should not. That was very inappropriate. Pirush Rashi. So Yomer Hashem el Moshe. So Hashem said to Moshe, so he's going to punish her. If somebody spits in the face of their father, disrespect for their father, halo tikalem shivat yamim, they have to be put away for 7 days. We have to punish them for a week, right? So Rashi explains, what was he saying? V'im avia herala panim zafot. If a father's upset with his daughter, halo tikalem shivat yamim, so she's punished 7 days. Kal v'chomer, all the more so, a fortiori l'shrina. You insulted the shrina, right? You said something very inappropriate that you shouldn't to the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? In a sense, right? Yud Daled Yom should be 14 days. But so why was she only put away for 7 days? Eladayo lavo minadin liot kinadu. This is a famous concept in the Torah that when we learn from one thing to another, sometimes you just, even though you could say like 7 days for a father to a daughter, but a daughter to a father, but a daughter insults the Rebbeinu Shalom, speaks inappropriately, right? It should be 14 days, but let's just give her what the father gave, the punishment from the father, right? Af b'nezivuto tisager shivat yamim. We'll just put her away 7 days. L'chura, yes, a very simple question. It's a very complicated kind of a thing, right? L'chura lama hayalo la'arich. What? Better? Okay, sorry. So he's asking, what do you have to go through, jump through all these hoops here with the 7 days, 14 days, and then anyway it's going to be 7 days, right? Lama lo laharich. Why take this long road? Lavalavo, vilavo, bedin kal v'chomer v'daya. What do you have to do this whole thing? It's 14 days, but I'll really make it 7 days, right? 7 to 14 to 7. Lama lo amar lo kipshuta. Why didn't he just say tisager shivat yamim? Put her away for 7 days punishment. V'achar te'asef, and then she can come back to the people. What do you have to do this for? What was the necessity of going through this whole process? V'hanirali, so I want to suggest, Rabbi Yaakov says, to be'emet, truth be told, katuv la'el, the pasuk says afterwards, vayomer Aaron el Moshe, Aaron says to Moshe, Bi Adoni, please, he pleads with his brother, Al na tashet aleinu chatat asher no'alnu v'asher chatanu. Don't punish us for the sin that we committed, right? Because, see, Miriam spoke to Aaron, And they both spoke about it, so it was not a good thing. So Aaron says to Moshe, please, don't punish us for what we did to you, what your sister and your brother did to you, right? And afterwards the Torah says, Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem. Moshe cried out, he davened to Hashem, El Hashem lemor, the shortest tefillah recorded in the history of the Torah. Keil na rifana la. Please God, heal her, right? She was given saras for a week. She was given leprosy for a week, Miriam. So heal her, please heal her. But Aaron said, please, what are you punishing? Don't punish her for what she did to us, right? Hare she'Aaron lo bikesh mechila me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Aaron did not ask forgiveness from God, ela Moshe. He asked forgiveness from Moshe. What's that all about? Why was that? Why did he ask forgiveness from Moshe? V'harei shahayu svurim, because they assumed shahachet, this speech, this lashon hora that they spoke with each other, and the inappropriate way that she spoke to Moshe, shahachet mikivan shehu bein adam lechavero, since it was between people, ein lehem rak levakesh mechila bilvad. He only had to ask mechila from Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Umikevan shehitpalel Moshe el Hashem, but Moshe davened to Hashem ba'ada for Miriam, right? Kel na rafa na Allah, please heal her. Hari lecha hochacha brura, this is proof positive. Shemachal lehem al kvodo, that he was moichel on his kavod. It's not about me. He said, forgive you? Excuse me. Instead of saying, I forgive you, he went and davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, please forgive them. So that also requires hesber. We have to understand what that's all about. He asked forgiveness from Moshe, and Moshe didn't answer him. He went to Shem and said, please forgive them, right? Right? And that the whole beginning, this is going to answer the whole beginning, the jumping through hoops with the 7 days of father, 14 days for a daughter, and then back to 7. God wanted to explain. You sin against an Adam, you sin against the Rabbanu Shalom. Sheyesod bein Adam lechavero, the foundation of bein Adam lechavero, hanu basher hanu tzelem. What is the avera of sinning against a human being? Because a human being is tzelem Elokim. A human being is created in the image of the Rabbanu Shalom. That's the sin. You sin against a human being. You're sinning against the Rabbanu Shalom. Ukemo shebiarti la'el, Parshat Noach, as he explains in Parshat Noach, story of murder. Gabi Rotseach, concerning the discussion of a murderer. It says about a murderer, shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam. If a person kills a human being, damo yishafech, he has to be killed. Ki b'tselem Elokim asa et ha'adam, because man was created in the image of God. So murder of a human being is not just murdering the human being, you're murdering the Rabbanu Shalom, right? So you see that there's a blending between mitzvahs ben adam l'chavero and mitzvahs ben adam l'makom. It's all one. Harida filu ritzicha atzma, even murder. Amra Torah, the Torah says she is sod ha'isur, the foundation of that terrible murder is the worst, right? Hu mipnei shetzelem Elokim bara et hadam, is because this man is created in the image of God. He is an image of the Rabbanu Shalom that you've just killed. V'kivan shekain, and therefore chato l'shchina, therefore you sinned against God. V'tzarach lahamtin lefachot shivat yamim, so you have to be punished for at least 7 days. That's he's answering now why he had to go through this whole business at the beginning. Rashi, v'chein hu be'emet lashon hora. That's what lashon hora is. Shehu lechura ben adam lechavero. It's between man and man. V'af al pi kein, that notwithstanding, Amar Razal, the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, shu kofer bi'ikar. Lashon hora is kofer bi'ikar. It's like the 3 cardinal averas, right? It's listed together. Actually, the Rambam says the 3 cardinal averas are terrible, but lashon hora is even worse. V'chein hama'alim einav min tzedakah gives another example. Someone who closes his eyes from tzedakah. Hariyuka oved akum. It says, the Gemara says he's like an idol worshiper, right? You cannot distinguish between relationship between man and man and relationship between man and God. This is a major idea. I'll just add to this that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, right, when we ask for forgiveness, right, part of the process of Rosh Hashanah is ritzui chavero, is asking mechila, right? You have to go to the person, you know. I've often said we live in an age now, anybody get emails asking for forgiveness, right? That's really the chicken way out, right? You know, send an email, please forgive me, right? Please forgive me. That's really not what mechila is all about, right? But there's a fascinating Rambam. Let's say someone did something to someone and he passed away. So the Rambam brings a halacha. What are you supposed to do? You have to take a minyan of people and you have to go to the kever and you have to say the following. I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but you have to say the following, the Rambam says. Chatati le'elokei Yisrael uleploni, and to so-and-so, right? Fascinating. What's that all about? What do you mean? I sinned to God and I sinned to this fellow, right? And he's nameless. It's not important what his name is, right? What's the Rambam saying? But you sin by speaking Lashon Hora, let's say, whatever you did to that person, you sin to the Ribono Shel Olam. And we even de-emphasize that we don't even bother to put the name in. Because why? It's really a question, because until that point, the Rambam speaks about if Chavero, if you sinned against Chavero and Chavero died, you go to the Beit Olam and this is what you do, and all of a sudden it doesn't say Chavero anymore. It just says the anonymous person, right? Whatever his name is. But you see here from this Rambam that the whole process that you have to go through before Yom Kippur is asking for forgiveness to God, to Ribono Shel Olam, for a sin Bein Adam L'Chavero, because they're blended. It's all the same. It's all one, okay? This next piece shouldn't have been there. It's from the next piece from Yaakov. Okay, number 2, from Rav Schwab. And this is going to be on Vayibin So Aaron, as is the third piece as well. So we have here famous 2 psukim. Vayibin So Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, when they carried the Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, Moshe said, Kuma Hashem, God, please rise up, Vayafutzu Evechas, spread out your enemies, and then Uvenucha Yomar, and then the second pasuk. So one is said when we take out the Sefer Torah, one is said when we put the Sefer Torah away. Now, it's interesting that years past we've discussed this. When you look in the Chumash, you'll remind yourselves that these 2 psukim are divided by 2 upside-down nuns, right? And the Gemara says that this is a parsha bifnei atzmo. It's a separate Sefer of Torah. So really there are 7 books of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, right? Because you have in Bamidbar, you have the break, and then you have, for the first half of Bamidbar, let's say, not a half, but until this part in Behaalotecha, then you have these 2 psukim is another Sefer, then you have the end of Bamidbar is another Sefer. So you really have 7 Sforim. Why the inverted nun? There are a lot of answers. One of I think the most significant is that this is not the place for this whole business. It's 50 parshiot away from where it really belongs. Nun is in Gematria 50, right? However, let's see what he's talking about now. Gemara, she quotes the Gemara in Shabbos. Tana Rabbanan. Vayehi bin so Aaron, the Gemara is talking about these psukim. Vayomer Moshe, Parsha zu Asala Kodesh Baruch Hu Simaniyut. The Ribono Shel Olam made signs separating this parsha, these 2 psukim, from the rest of the Torah. Rashi, lahavdila min hasmuchot la. In other words, to separate it from what's before it and what's after it. Why? Milamala milamata, right? Mitchilu b'sof. Why? Lomar, to teach you she'ein ze mekoma. This is not where it really was supposed to be. But he wanted to interrupt something, put something in between something. The lav bahalichot masaot mishtoi le'el mineh. We're not talking about the journeys of Klal Yisrael, right? That's 50 parshiot away, right? So why is it mentioned here? This should be mentioned when they were traveling, right? When the Aaron is traveling, we pray to God, remove our enemies, save us, right? V'lama katva kan, why is it written here? Here's the answer. Kidei lahafsik bein poranut harishona leporanut shniya. To separate between the first calamity and the second calamity. To separate these two calamities. Poranut shniya, what's the second calamity? Mahi vayia mit onanim. We complained. We complained about the man. We wanted food. We wanted meat. And the Rebbe Shalom gave us meat, quail to eat until we couldn't eat. We couldn't eat it anymore, right? V'tiva'er bam eish Hashem. First he brought down a fire. V'tochal b'katzeh ha'machne. And there was a terrible tragedy. Many people were taken away, right? Poranut rishona. What was the first poranut? What was the first calamity? Which we know we're just, and this is really a post, and so is the next one, really a post-Shavuos idea, right? Amar Rav Chama b'Revi Chanina, shesaru me'acharei Hashem. They turned away from God. What does that mean? Pirshu HaTosfos, the commentary in the Gemara, b'shem Medrash, Yelamadnu, this teaches us, shesaru me'acharei Hashem. They ran away from Hashem. How? B'meh nasu mehar Sinai. I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago. They ran away from Har Sinai. Ketinok hayotzei mibeit hasefer. Like a child that runs away from school, the last day of school. Today's the last day of school here, right? For elementary school, right? So how does a kid leave school? Gone, right? Gone in 60 seconds, right? We left Har Sinai like a child runs away from Cheder, the last day of school. Sheborech lo v'holech lo. He really runs away. Kach hayu borchim mehar Sinai. That's how we ran away from Har Sinai. Derech shloshet yamim. 3 days later, right? Over the page. No. Sorry. Go to the column on the right. Sorry. Stay on page 1. My mistake. Column on the right. Shalamdu harbe Torah mi Sinai. So they learned a great deal of Torah on Har Sinai. Obviously, they received the entire Torah on Har Sinai, right? Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu said, Lo nismach. So these are the two things, right? They complained. They complained about the food. They wanted meat, and they complained. Then they ran away from Har Sinai. So now, why interrupt with these two psukim that are out of place? Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu. Lo nismach poranut leporanut. We don't want to put the calamities together. We don't want to put these two calamities together, right? That's the Gemara. V'yesh lavin. We have to understand. Inyan ha'hefsek bein poranut leporanut. Why do you have to separate between calamities? What's the idea of that, right? Vinay hamashal. This idea, shel tinok haborech mibeit hasefer, that this crime of Bnei Yisrael was they ran away like a child runs away the last day of school. Lamdu Chazal teaches us mimashiyesh ledakdek al masha amar hakatuv, how we have to be so careful about the pasuk that the Rebbe Shalom says, vayisu mehar Sinai, mehar Hashem, that they ran away from Har Hashem, right? Shehinei. Sibat kriyat Har Sinai b'shem Har Hashem. Why is Har Sinai called the mountain of God? Right? It has a name. Why is it all of a sudden just called the mountain of God? Its name, its personal name is taken away from it. Hayeta machmat hashrat hashchina alav. Because the Rebbe Shalom lived there. The Rebbe Shalom did dwell there. It was Har Hashem. V'achar hakamat hamishkan, but after the establishment of the Mishkan, asher niyesh sham mokom hashrat hashchina, where now the place of residence of the Shechina now was moved from Har Sinai to the Mishkan, right? Kvar lo haya Har Sinai Har Hashem. It's no longer Har Hashem. If you read the article I wrote in Torah Tidbits, we talked about this, right? Okay? And if you didn't, too bad. Okay? You're not missing anything. Okay? Shekfar nistalka misham hashchina. The Shechina already left Har Sinai, right? No more Kedusha to Har Sinai, right? We spoke about that a few weeks ago. The Ramban holds as a mitzvah d'oraita to remember Har Sinai, but the other Rishonim don't hold that way. right? We're not going to go there, but the Shekhinah was taken away from Har Sinai, right? We don't even know where Har Sinai is anymore, right? Ulechein hutar ha'aliyah alav, and therefore you can now even climb. You want to just climb Mount Everest? You don't have to. You can climb Har Sinai now, no problem, right? K'dichtiv, it says bimshoch hayovel hemiyalu bahar. They actually climbed up onto the mountain, right? V'dino kahar ben ha'arim. Har Sinai is a mountain like any other mountain. Gemara Tainus, Gemara Beitza talks about that in two places. V'imkein lama nikra od kan b'shem Har Hashem. So why is it still called Har Hashem? If it's no longer the Har Hashem, why is it called Har Hashem? V'tzrichim lomar, we have to say, shiratzu b'nei Yisrael, what the Jewish people wanted to do, she'yishaer b'hahar b'kedushato, that the mountain should maintain its kedusha, Har Hashem, v'lo telech hashchina imahem. And the Shechina, you just stay here. I'm out of school, right? I'm out of school. As I said, today is the last day of elementary school here in this country, right? So you stay, let the Torah stay in school, right? Lo telech hashchina imahem. But don't follow me, right? Now it's summer vacation. I don't want to think about Torah, right? You stay there, Rabbanu Shalom, right? Dugmat hatinok haboreach mi beit hasefer. This is the mashal of a child running away from school on the last day. Ve'enu rotzeh shehamelamdo yelech acharav. He doesn't want his teacher to follow him, right? Lelamdo, to teach him. Amnam, truth be told, akati muksha. There's still a question here. Hari lo matzinu shene'enshu Yisrael al yitziatam katinuk haboreach mi beit hasefer. They weren't punished. They weren't punished for this. You don't see a punishment for this. So what's the calamity? We were not punished. It was a calamity without an onish, which also requires explanation, right? Now, over the page, on the right-hand column, okay? Venira, it would appear, she'atorah melamadnu, the Torah is teaching us, shehoil sheshayach inyan poranut below onish, there's such a thing, this is a chiddush, there's such a thing as calamity without punishment. There's such a thing as doing something wrong and there's no punishment, right? He's going to say there's two dinim in punishment. There's two concepts in punishment. There's something you do wrong and then there's a punishment which is separate, but there's also something you do wrong and there's no external punishment. What's he going to say now? Ki hachet be'atzmo hu ha'onish. The sin itself, the misstep itself, is the punishment. By putting us in a circumstance without Torah, we realize later we punished ourselves. It's a calamity without punishment, without an external punishment. The punishment is ingrained in what we did in that moment of calamity, right? Dugma l'davar, let me give you an example. Hakorei et Shema. When a person reads Shema Yisrael, Uba Amron, he says, V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha. You should love Hashem with all your heart. Einu margish b'livo shumava. He's saying the words. He's not concentrating. He doesn't feel any love to the Rebbeinu Shalom when he says it, right? Ein shumava l'kodesh Baruch Hu. Im kein, b'meh nechshav amirato. How does the Rebbeinu Shalom judge that statement, that tefillah that he said? How do we look at it? Ubihidbonanu al matzavo. When you look at his situation, when we start to analyze, let's analyze this guy who's saying and he's not thinking about it. Al matzavo. Hare hachet atzmo. The chet is shehishamein libo, that his heart fattened. He was too self-absorbed, right? Milahishtokeik el kirvat elokim. To think about coming close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Hu haparnu, that's the calamity, right? That's the calamity, that he did not get close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. He lost that moment. V'oy lo busha. Woe to this shame. Shetachar asher yiva'er libo bekirbo ba'avat Hashem, that a person has in his heart a burning love of God. Yeshlo leiv even, and he doesn't. He says, rather than having that fire of Avad Hashem, that love feeling in his heart, he has a leiv even. He has a heart of stone, right? That's his punishment. He created this punishment. Now I have to deal with the fact that I have a heart of stone. And how do I get rid of that, right? Eventually he's going to realize, on Yom Kippur maybe, if he can't wait to do it earlier, he's going to realize I got a real problem here. I have a punishment. I punished myself. Chen be'omra be'kabbalat Shabbat. When you say by Kabbalah Shabbos, Boi v'shalom, Boi v'shalom, come in peace, come in peace. We sing L'chadodi, right? Gam b'simcha uv'tzahala, with tremendous simcha, right? V'lo yizkeh la'hargashat ha'simcha, and we don't saying it, and we don't feel the simcha b'kedushat ha'Shabbat, in the sanctity of Shabbos. Al af shaharbe b'hachana derabba lichvod hayom. We did so much in preparation for Shabbos, and now we come into say and we don't feel it. Harizeh onish min hashemayim, it's a punishment. The lack of feeling that simcha. Right, the lack of feeling Avad Hashem when I say Shema without kavanah, the lack of feeling the simcha of Shabbos by not saying it with kavanah, that in itself is a punishment. We punish ourselves. It's not an external punishment. We brought it on ourselves. Now he says, Uparanut kazu haitan nesiatam me'ar Sinai. That's what running away from Har Sinai was. That was the child, like a child running away from Har Sinai. Sheborchu katinuk haborech min beit hasefer, like a child running away from school. V'ne'edar mehem atzar al hafradatam, and this is the pain of their separation. Mi'amakom shekiblu kedushat Yisrael, we have the sanctity. U'mi'amakom shelamdu harbe Torah, the place where we learn so much Torah. Kiloshen atosas, we said before. Hu paranis v'onis. That is the punishment. By running away, we created a person. A lower level person. We punished ourselves, right? By creating ourselves a non-spiritual person who was running away from Torah, right? Final column on the left. Ulumat the second punishment. Yesh paranut abo al chet. There is such a thing as a punishment, an external punishment that comes from a sin, right? Kigon hamit onanim, the complainers, right? Shabiru bam eish Hashem. God brought a fire. V'tochal b'ketzei hamachna, and it burnt at the edge of the camp. Shemachmat, and killed people. Shemachmat tarumotam ala kodesh Baruch Hu, because of their complaining against Ribono Shel Olam. Hayemevakshim alila lifrosh me'acharei hamakom. They complained against God, right? The other one was simcha, right? They didn't have this proper simcha. Here they complained against God, right? Bo aleim onish hitba'ara, till the fire came, right? Ukidei lechalek bein beit sugei haporanut, in order to separate. This is the answer why he has to separate between one calamity and the other, because they're two different calamities. One is one that I brought on myself, and the punishment comes from the act itself, and the other is an external punishment that I'm given because of that which I did. Right? Hifsika Torah Parshat vayibin soa. So therefore the Torah brought in, the Rebbe Shem brought in these two psukim, lahorot sheyesh poranut, she'etzem hachet hu ha'onish, to tell us that the chiddush, that's a tremendous chiddush, that not only is there a sin which has an external, you have to pay the piper, we get a punishment for it, but there's also a sin where there's no external punishment. We created the sin, we created the punishment ourselves, and we have to deal with that, and it's much harder to deal with that kind of punishment. Finally, he says, V'yesh lomar, Od, I want to just add a P.S. Shinei, Chet nesiatam mehar Sinai, the misstep of running away from Har Sinai, Haya shesamchu, I guess, behafradatam mimakom kabbalat haTorah, shesimchu. They were happy about being separated from, the place where they received the Torah, right? I've mentioned, I think once in the past, that the Alta of Slobodka, the great educator, the Alta of Slobodka, Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, who educated some of the greatest Rosh Yeshivas of the 20th century, right? That he said, you sit in the back of the Beis Medrash, and he could tell his students, not by the way they came into the Beis Medrash and opened the Gemara and learned, but how they closed the Gemara and left the Beis Medrash to go to lunch. That's how he saw it. How did they leave the Beis Medrash? How did they get up and go, right? So, Aval chetam shel hamitonenim, but the sin of the complainers, haya shahayu shruyim ba'atzvut, they were sad, right? So there's a sin of simcha, of simcha, the wrong kind of misplaced simcha, tragically against Torah, and now misplaced sadness against the Ribono Shel Olam, depression, right? I mean, onanim they were called. Look at onain, the word anonin. Anonin is a mourner, right? Shemita bel al meis, person after between misa, between death, and between burial, and between death and kfura, the person is a separate stage of oni, can't do mitzvahs, right? So there's a sin of sadness, inappropriate sadness against the Ribono Shel Olam. V'lo avdu et Hashem b'simcha, they didn't serve Hashem with simcha. V'im kein, lo die, it's not enough, shebochu mehar Hashem b'simcha, bad enough that they ran away from the Ribono Shel Olam with simcha, ela od, hit'avlu al avodatam HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they also were depressed that they have to do service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? V'gadol avonam, what a terrible, terrible crime, right? V'zeu pirush amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what God says, lo nismach paranut leparanut. We can't put these two calamities have to be understood as two completely separate ideas, right? It's a tremendous chiddush, he's saying. Hainu paranut rishona hasimcha livrach me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The first is the simcha of running away from Hashem. Uparanut shnia, and the second is ha'atzvut, the sadness, the depression. That they have to follow Hashem. I got to do this now. Right? I always say Shabbos, it's not on Shabbos that I can't do it. What we have to prepare for Shabbos. You can't do malacha on Shabbos. What does it mean you can't do malacha on Shabbos? It's not I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this. No, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. I have arrived. We've often pointed out that Shabbos is me'ein olam haba, the Gemara says. Shabbos is me'ein olam, it's a taste of the world to come. I think I've shared this with you a couple of months ago, maybe. But what does it mean that Shabbos is a taste of olam haba? So, in order to understand a point in hashkafa, in machshava, you have to see where it plays out in halacha. If you see where it plays out in halacha, you'll understand what it's saying. Where is this play out in halacha on Shabbos? This idea that Shabbat is me'ein olam haba, taste of the world to come. Where do you see it in Shabbos? It's not in Kiddush. It's not in Kiddush. It's not in the Shmon Esrei. Where is it? You know where it is? In benching. The end of benching. Harachaman. Who what? I don't say the Harachamans. What is it, Harachaman? Who? What does it say? Who yitchilenu yom shekulo Shabbos u'menucha. He gave us a day of Shabbos and Menucha, right? Why in Ben? That Harachaman u'yanchilenu yom shekulo Shabbos. There's all Shabbos, which is talking about Olam Haba, right? Olam Haba. It's all Shabbos, right? Why in benching? So I'll tell you why in benching. Because it's going to explain what Shabbat is me'ein. What is Olam Haba? Olam Haba is our arrival. It's the end of the journey. There's no more mitzvahs anymore. You can't get any more brownie points anymore. Once after 120 years, that's it. When we get to Olam Haba, the Olam of Shabbat u'menucha, which total Shabbos, we don't. It's the end of our journey. It's arrival. We've really arrived, right? You know, there's a story about the Vilna Gaon. His sister, he hadn't seen in 50 years, came to visit him. And they told him his sister's here. He went out, he brought her in, he sat down. He said, listen, we have 5 minutes, right? But don't worry. When we get to the Olam HaEmet, we'll be together all the time. But we have to work right now for that moment of arrival, right? It's about arrival, right? So where do you feel that sense, I have arrived? It's a ke'ein, a me'ein, kind of a false arrival, right? A taste of arrival, a taste, me'ein olam haba. Where do we have that, right? That's Shabbos. How is that so? Why is it in benching? So think about this. You're going to go out, take the family out to your favorite restaurant Sunday night, and you don't eat the whole day. Right? Everybody's thinking, I'm going to have my favorite food. We're going favorite restaurant. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have that. Right? At least that's the way I think. Right? And you get to the restaurant. You hadn't had breakfast. You haven't had lunch. Right? And you eat like mamish. And then after you're finished, your next door neighbor comes in 2 hours later. And they sit down and they take their menus and they start ordering. You can't even look at what they're doing, right? Why? Because I'll never eat another thing for the rest of my life. I'm full. That's it. I'm going on a diet starting now, right? What happens? You get home 3 hours, 4 hours later, you start opening the refrigerator, right? Because eating is a perfect example of a false sense of arrival. I have filled my body up. I don't need any. It's a false sense of arrival. And there's an emphasis on Shabbos of the Sudat Shabbat of 3 meals on Shabbos, right? There's even an opinion to have 4 meals on Shabbos, right? We have 3 meals on Shabbos, right? Sometimes we have trouble with that 3rd meal with the Shalosh, especially in the winter, right? So that's what Shabbos is, Me'ein Olam Haba. It's a taste of the world to come. It's not the real thing, but it's our sense of arrival. It's a temporary gift that the Rebbeinu Shem gives us, this sense of arrival. So it's not that I can't do this and I don't have to do this on Shabbos. Everything is prepared for me. I've arrived, right? That's a tremendous simcha of doing mitzvahs. We learn from Shabbos to the rest, not to be sad, I have to do this, I got to do that, right? Okay. Final piece, okay? Final piece. We're not going to get to this 4th piece. I was afraid we were not going to get there, but I'm going to do it next week. It's a classic mimer from Rav Hutner, which we're going to do next week. But we're going to end up with Rav Shaul Alter, who we've been using lately, the Rosh Hashiva of Ger, who, by the way, is sitting Shiva. He lost his mother, and he's sitting Shiva. And so in the schus of Liat Neshama for his mother, was the Holy Rebbe, daughter of the Pnei Menachem. So the wife of the Pnei Menachem, right. Stand corrected. Thank you, Rabbi. Parshat, again, he gets back to Vayibin So Aaron, okay? Vayibin So, he's going to repeat a little bit. Vayibin So Aaron, right, in our Parsha, when we carried the Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Hashem, etc., V'nucha Yomar, Shuva Hashem, return to us. The Gemara says, Parsha Zu Asalah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Simanayut, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made signs, Milamala Lamata, an inverted nun on both sides, Mipnei Sefer Chashuv Hu Mipnei Atzmo, it's a Sefer Chashuv by itself. There were 2 answers, by the way. He focused on, Rav Schwab focused on the other, to separate between the 2 paranut, but the Gemara also says it's a Sefer Chashuv Mipnei Atzmo. There's something about these 2 psukim that are a book in and of themselves. For Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Atida, in the future, Parsha Zu Shetiaker Mikan, eventually it's going to be taken from here, V'tichta b'mkoma, and it'll be put back in its place, which is about 50 Parshiot. Now, not Parshiot, the Parshiot, the big Samach or the big Pei in the Chumash, each one of those are Parshiot. So it's going to be put back to the Parsha of the traveling, right? Why is it here? Paranut Shniyah, to separate between the 2 calamities. Paranut Shniyah, the second Paranut, Ma'i, we complained. We were looking for an excuse how to get away from Hashem, right? Poranut harishona vayisu mehar v'amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina shesara me'achrei Hashem b'rish Rashi shemitoch shlosha yamim linus. It was only 3 days from Har Sinai, right? Tavu ha'asafsuf taiva. We had this tremendous taiva for meat. Litraim al basar kedei limrod b'kodesh Baruch Hu, and to go against Hashem. Ubetosva pirshu shayu katina kayotzi beta sefer. Again, it's all repeated. It's just a good review for us. Sheborech v'holech, ran away from school. Kedei sha parshiot shel paranut lo ayu smuchot zu. They shouldn't be together. Ichnisu me'emtza parsha shel. So they put in the middle. Kadosh Baruch Hu put in the middle this vayibin so Aaron. It's going to ask the same question. V'yesh lavin amay tzorach hafsaka ben kriyat paranut rishona l'kriyat paranut shniya. Right? He's asking the same question as Rav Yaakov, right? So here you have a Litvish Shigordel and a Chassidish Shigordel asking the same question, right? But the answers are going to be different. V'hatenach masha amru Chazal, and Chazal said, and you have to mention this, the Gemara Megillah, Ezra tikein lehem liYisrael. Ezra gave us a minhag that we do today when he established the Kriyat Torah for us. Korin klalot shebetorat kohanim. We read the klalos in Sefer Vayikra, Kodam Atzeres, before Shavuos, right? 2 weeks before Shavuos, right? Kedei shetikale shana behaalotecha. So we should get rid of the year with its curses. V'hagaonim tiknu, and the Gaonim added sheyafsiku Shabbat achat ben kriyat atochat lebein the column on the left Shavuot. In other words, it's not right before Shabbat. They put in Parshat Naso, and then we go into right Shavuot, right? V'zeu mishum. Why is that? I mean, we have Naso after Shavuos, right? Okay, Shavuos, v'zeu mishum. Why do we have a break? We don't go directly from the curses, the anti-brachas into Shavuos. Mishum shekorin tochacha v'klalot. We're reading these curses, the bad things that happen to good people when they're not good. Ulechein osim hafsaka. So we make an interruption. We put in another parsha of the Torah. Aval poranut ena tochacha v'klalot. Poranut, the calamities, they're not they're not curses. We ran away from Har Sinai like bad boys, bad children, right? We demanded more gashmis, more food, rather than wanting to serve Hashem properly, right? El katuv b'Torah sipur, that's a story, shekvar avar, a story that happened. What's the calamity? Al achatayim shel b'nei Yisrael, shayu b'yamim hahem, the missteps of b'nei Yisrael in those days. But it's not a tochacha, it's not a curse that's going to affect us, is it? Seder Amorot, it's history. 2 historical moments, right? Running away from Har Sinai and demanding food. 3 days after we left Har Sinai. Mahu atzorach b'hafsaka. What do you need to separate the 2 of them for? La'asot simaniyut im nun hafucha mikan v'kan. Why do we do that, right? So here's a different answer, very quick answer. Aval be'emet, the truth is, ha'afsaka no'ada, not the way Rabbi Yaakov said, rather Rav Schwab said, the chiddush of 2 kinds of punishment, right? Internal and external. But he says, I'll tell you why. L'limud l'dorot. He wanted to teach something for generations. He wanted us to teach us something forever. It wasn't just a historical moment, but there's something to get out of this historical moment. That we should ponder this great misstep, this sin of running away from Har Sinai. We didn't have to stay at Har Sinai forever. Rabbi Hashem told us to go back to our tents, right? Now you've got the Torah. Live your lives in your homes. Live a normal, healthy life with Torah. Take the Torah from Har Sinai. The problem was that we dashed out of Har Sinai. So this is a post-Shavuos idea, right? Im hargasha, with the sense, okay, we got the Torah. It was a great Shavuos, right? Had a great piece of cheesecake. Misonanim, right? That's what Shavuos is all about? No, but it's a little bit, right? But I learned Torah all night. I learned Torah, right? I finished. Now let's go back to normal life, right? That's not normal life, is taking that Torah, right? And maybe a little cheesecake also for Torah, right? That we have to think about the chet of the mitonanim, the cheesecake chet, right? The lo rak ha'asafsuf, not just the quail. Ha'erev rav hitavu ta'ava, there was a tremendous desire for this pleasure. Elegam livnei Yisrael haya eze shehu ratzon l'ribui gashmia. We wanted more gashmias, more physical pleasure, right? Uba Torah lamadnu, and Torah is coming to teach us. Shachen yeshin yanei olam hazeh. Yes, there's such a thing as the joys and the pleasure of this world. Udvarim chumrim, and material things. Aval tzarach lirot sha'aron kodesh, that the holy ark, haruchniut, the spirituality, yesagur mesugar, but it should be protected, right? Muvdal mikol agashmiyut, right? Don't mix the 2. You can blend the 2, and you should blend the 2, that the gashmiyut should be in the service of Hashem. Hashem wants us to enjoy the pleasures of this world, but to see it as part of the Aron HaKodesh, that it's all one. Ulechein Parshat Vayi bin Saharon Mugdar im nun lemfanea v'nun lachra. So that's why there was a separation, right? These two ideas are also eternal ideas. They're not just moments in history, right? The idea of running away from our spirituality and running towards our physicality. Avoid that. Bring the two together. Okay. Very good. Thank you all.